Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hello and welcome to episode 58 of the English with Kirsty podcast. And this week I'm talking to Shannon Kennedy about language immersion and the things that you can do to immerse yourself in another language, which will then make it easier for you to learn that language. And so the first thing we talk about is whether you actually have to go to another country in order to improve your language skills.
I don't think that people can only learn a language really well in the country. Language immersion can be really great for language learners, but it's only as effective as you're willing to make it. Mm-hmm. And you don't actually even have to go abroad to create that immersion environment. You can do it at home as well. It's all about, you get what you put into it. And that goes with, for any kind of resource for language learning, whether that's immersion or a course book or a vocabulary flashcard tool or something like that. So, you don't have to go abroad. And even when you do go abroad, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to learn the language really well. There's people who have lived abroad for years and still haven't learned the language of the country that they're living in. So, it's all about what work you're willing to do.
Yeah, that's true. You can go on holiday with friends who speak your language, and then you all speak your native language and don't speak any of the language that you're trying to learn. I've seen it happen to people before.
Exactly.
For anyone who doesn't know about this concept of language immersion, how would you briefly describe what that is?
Language immersion is really putting yourself in an environment where you're surrounded by the language, whether that's at home or if it's in the country. So, for example, if you were to create an immersion environment at home, you would do things like put posters up or postcards up with, vocabulary, or you opt to read books in your target language or watch films in your target language as opposed to doing it in your native language. And then in the country, actually going out and traveling to have that immersion experience. It would be going to places where people who speak the language are hanging out and initiating conversations with them, or just going out and experiencing the language rather than staying in an expat bubble or staying in areas that are highly touristy and it's easy to find people who speak your language, rather than kind of, putting yourself out there and really trying to use the language, going, playing it safe and going places where you know that you can always fall back on English or your native language.
Yeah, because sometimes it's easier to go to places where people won't speak your language than to places where they may be wanting to learn your language as well, so they try to speak your language rather than actually speaking theirs, which is what you're there to do. So sometimes you have to negotiate that a bit and explain that you want to try and improve your language skills too.
Yeah, it can be especially hard when you're traveling too, because, when you go to a country, you want to see, all the different things that the country is known for. So if you go to, for example, I went to China, you want to see the Great Wall and you want to see the Forbidden City and you want to see things like that. And when you go to those sorts of places, the people who work there and the people who are in those areas, they tend to speak English or other languages. So they'll insist on speaking those with you, assuming that you might not understand, in this case, Chinese. And so you really have to kind of almost be insistent on using Chinese, and sometimes you even need to be willing to have experiences outside of those standard travel experiences, like going, off the beaten path a little bit to find places where you might run into people who don't speak your native language or English, and so that it kind of forces you to really use your target language, and that has to be something that you're willing to do and be comfortable with. And so, you have to get outside of your comfort zone a little bit. Even when you're at home, if you have a job or you go to school, the last thing you may want to do at the end of the day is watch a movie in German instead of watching a movie in English, because it's tiring, because you are working, your brain's working a little bit harder to try and understand the second language. but, you need to do the work in order to see the progress that you're looking for. So even though it may be a little bit more exhausting to watch that German movie instead of that English language movie, making that choice is going to do a lot for your language learning.
Going back to something you said earlier about finding people in your own country, what would you suggest for people to find people to speak with while they're in their own country?
Okay. There's a lot of things that you can do. Technology and the internet are wonderful tools for the modern language learner. You can find other people who speak your target language that you can do language exchanges with, through tools like italki, HelloTalk. There's also Tandem app. You can connect with them via Skype. You can find them in Facebook groups and things like that. So there's plenty of places to find people from around the world and get in touch with them and do language exchanges with them so you get the practice in. You can also do things like join online communities that are in your target language rather than joining communities for things that are in your native language. So if you have hobbies, like maybe you're a gamer or you're really into hiking or martial arts or some sort of dance or any kind of sport or really anything. You can find communities online that exist that speak your target language, and then rather than, joining up with the group that speaks your native language, you join up with the group who speaks your target language, and then that way you get to talk about something that you're passionate about, and it helps you learn really relevant vocabulary to you personally because it's something that you're already interested in, something that you would imaginably want to speak about in your target language. And then, it gets you connected with a group of people who speak the language that you're learning. And you can create an immersion environment beyond just speaking with other people. There's other things that you can do at home to kind of imitate that environment that you might have by traveling to another country. So like I said, you can use posters or index cards or other images around your home to help you learn new vocabulary so they can actually have the vocabulary on it, or it can just be an image that kind of inspires you to go and study or think in or use your target language. You can do things like write yourself notes, journal, create your grocery lists, create your to-do lists, and things like that in your target language. And that's a great way to learn important day-to-day vocabulary. And you can also, as I said before, watch TVs or movies or select reading material in your target language. You can also listen to the radio or music in your target language, YouTube, Spotify, and there are just a ton of tools online, and there's free radio online in a variety of languages. So you have access to that because of the internet as well. You can also do things like change your devices, your computer, your phone, your Kindle, whatever, even your gaming systems you can change into other languages. I have my car set in another language, so you can change those sorts of things, the tools that you interact with on a daily basis, into your target language, as well as, your social media accounts and things like that. On my phone, my Facebook is in Chinese, and on my computer it's set to French, so I get, exposure to multiple languages that way. So you can do that with, Twitter, with Instagram, with Facebook. You can change the language for all of those things as well. You can also, as I said, shift your hobbies into your target language. So if you're not able to find a community online for whatever it is that you enjoy doing, you can also, just watch YouTube tutorials on how to do those things in your target language. So if you like cooking, you can watch someone make a recipe on YouTube using your target language. So you can, maybe find an Italian recipe in Italian on YouTube, or even find a written recipe somewhere as well. And then also a lot of places have, communities that kind of exist locally where your target language is spoken. So for example, where I live, there is a Chinese community about, 20 minutes away. So I can go there and I can go to the store, go shopping, buy books, buy groceries in Chinese. I can, meet people who speak the language, and it gives me a good opportunity to practice. And then the last thing that you can do is you can also converse with yourself. So if your internal dialogue is in your target language, it's really good practice. And it also helps you kind of figure out where the gaps are in the language that you're learning, because as you kind of talk with yourself, you'll quickly realize which grammar rules and which vocabulary you don't really know well. So then you can sit down and you can work on those.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I used to talk to my dog a lot. I didn't expect her to understand, but in German or Turkish or whatever I was learning at that time, and just realize where the gaps are, which words I need to go and look up, and what, if there was an idea that I found difficult to express, could I do it in another way, or do I need to go and find out how to do that? And I think you're right, there are so many opportunities now. It's really all about looking for them and putting yourself in situations where you have to use the language, whether it's at home or in another country. Sometimes people aren't just going to come up and speak to you. You really need to go and seek out those opportunities to practice and speak the other language.
Exactly, yeah. And not only do you need to seek them out, but you need to, as I said before, you need to be kind of insistent, because sometimes when people hear that you have an accent, or maybe you stumble over a certain word, or, you messed up the grammar of the sentence that you said, they might automatically switch for you and make that decision. So, you need to be, it can be frustrating, but you need to, just push through and keep trying, and eventually your efforts will pay off. But no matter what you do, whether you go for immersion at home or you travel for the immersion experience, you have to put the work in. And for me personally, I feel that a travel immersion experience is best suited once you kind of hit that intermediate phase, because I really think that you're going to get the best experience at that point with an abroad immersion, with a broad immersion. So I don't think that if you don't speak the language at all, or if you're really at that beginning stage, that you're going to get as much out of it as you would a little bit later when you have a better foundation in the language. So starting with immersion at home is a really great way for you to kind of build that foundation for that one day when you go and travel. And travel is expensive. So, a lot of people aren't able to do it. And the great thing is that now you really don't have to.
Yeah, the internet can bring the people to you and the information to you as well. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to share the link to the article that you wrote about this as well, and other links to your blog and your social media channels. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Not at this point. Not that I can think of. Just, happy studying, and I hope that, your listeners get to experience immersion in some way at some point, because it can be really gratifying.
Yeah, it's a really valuable experience. So there you have lots of examples of things that you can do to create this language immersion experience at home or when you go away. And so I hope there's been something there that's given you an idea of something new to try, or something that you are already doing that you can maybe do it a different way, or something that will help to make your language immersion experience better. And as I said, there's an article that goes along with this, so I'll link that on the show notes page, which is www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 58. So I hope you enjoyed this interview. Have a good week and have fun learning English. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.